From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We are joined as always with our super producer, Alexis, codename Doc Holliday Jackson. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. Oh, folks, we're still catching up with some jet lag. At least one of us was running late to tonight's recording, but we return with some fresh baked strange news. And and Matt wanted to do a quick behind the scenes check-in here. Earlier we were talking about meth in watermelon, and I had mentioned that we set it on a recording of strange news when in fact we had not. It was this episode that we were going to mention it on.
Oh yeah, those melons, man. Weird fruit has been going around, and we talked about it a whole bunch in an episode that just came out. So check that out if you haven't listened to it yet. But these fake melons, do you want to give a quick update on what they are, Ben?
Well, they're definitely not watermelons. They are, in fact, methamphetamine.
Wait a minute. Are you saying watermelons is methamphetamine? Are these interchangeable? No way. These
are not interchangeable, which is why law enforcement is a little bit
miffed.
Yeah, they're miffed.
Are these the ones that look like weird watermelon-shaped Christmas presents? Is that what we're talking about? Okay, cool.
Yes, it's painted paper made to look like a watermelon, but it's just got meth in there.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's our cold open?
Yeah, that's it.
And we've returned. And today, we are traveling to a place called Idaho Springs, Colorado.
What? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's right.
I won't allow it.
Remember Miamisburg that was in some other far-flung place?
Sure. Kansas City, shout out.
This is
Long Island City is also not like in Long Island. Sorry, carry on.
Oh, nuts. Well, Idaho Springs, Colorado is roughly 32 miles due west of Denver, Colorado. And we're going there to explore a very recent and fast-moving homicide case. But before we get to the story, let's roleplay for just a second, guys. I'm curious to know what y'all would do in this situation that I'm about to describe, and then I'll tell you what I would do too, and we'll just talk about maybe what all of us should do in this kind of situation. So just imagine that you guys didn't hear from me all day, right? Then I just didn't show up for a recording session, and then still for 24 hours after that time, you didn't hear from me. I wasn't communicating on any of the channels we usually talk on, and you just couldn't get a hold of me. What would you do?
I would call a family member, a sibling, anyone that I had the information, the closest person to you. That is what I would immediately do.
I would probably do the same while moving to your last known physical location.
That's a really good point there. That's one of the things that I think prepared. I would do. Mm-hmm. Seriously, where I would go to where I thought the person was, if it was one of you guys, where I thought you were last, right? That's without having any kind of technological ability to see somebody. Like because as of right now, we're not sharing our locations with each other. I know a lot of people do that with close friends.
Come on.
I do it with my family. I do it with my kid. I think it's important for that. Yeah, I think it's useful.
That part I get, but it's like we don't have air tags on each other.
Yeah. I was just learning a lot about that, especially, at least from what I've heard, women will share their location with a trusted close friend if they're ever going out, right? Yeah, and it's just, boom, that's a way you can find me if you got to find me.
Matt, can I ask, at what point would you escalate it to moving toward the location? I don't think you would do that just having not heard from somebody for a couple of hours. Just wondering.
A couple of hours, probably not. We have actually a mutual friend who happens to work at iHeart that has this tendency. This person isn't here immediately, but this person will go incommunicado for 48 hours We're talking texting and calling. And it's just because this person is like, no, I'm not dealing with that until it's time for whatever the next thing is that I need to deal with. And it has in the past been a thing where I have driven to a very far away place to make sure that person is alive.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
I think I do too. But isn't it funny though how that expectation of immediate response has become a thing? I think it really does figure into it. Yeah.
It's not the way humans should work. When you have the red receipts on stuff.
Oh God, what psychotics leave those on? First of all, no, thank you. I really
some of our friends. I don't like actually.
What are you taunting me? Get it? Stop it! Why aren't you responding? You hate me. I go from why are you responding to you hate me in 2 steps.
So here we are. You've gone missing. You're not just 20 minutes late to a recording like Ben Bullen with jet lag. You are 48 hours gone.
Just missing, essentially, at least electronically. So let's say it's 2 full days where you haven't heard from me, and you do decide I'm going to go to his last known location. You come to my house, and when you roll up, you realize, oh, the door appears to be kicked in. You step inside, drops,
dude. I mean,
everything in the house appears to have been gone through, tossed. Like drawers are empty. It's a ransacking. Yes, exactly.
Terrifying.
And then you notice, wait, Meadow's not here. Matt's dog isn't even at the house.
Matt would never put Meadow in jeopardy. That is not Mondo red flag.
Well, what's the move then? Just call the cops?
Oof. I mean,
are you asking like hypothetically or
get a report filed? That's a big deal. That's evidence of malfeasance, you know?
Yeah, you have to at that point, sadly, the role players would have to immediately contact authorities or a third party because if you stumble across that scene and you are the first on the scene and you don't document it, you are also becoming the number one suspect in a disappearance.
That's a really good point. Well, what happens if you do that very thing and a sheriff's deputy comes out to check out the situation, but since there's no sign of me, the severity of the situation isn't really felt at the sheriff's office. The whole missing persons thing kind of goes into effect. But what if it takes 2 full days for anyone to organize any kind of search for again, me in this case, but just your missing friend? You can't get the police or the sheriffs to act for 2 more full days.
That's rough because that also, I'm glad you bring this up. This reminds me of the common myth in propaganda shows. The idea that one must wait 24 hours to report a missing person. Totally not true, by the way, folks. In fact, that 24-hour time window is the best chance. It's the best series of hours you will have to find a missing human individual.
Oh, they say that on cop shows too, though. On kidnapping situations, they always say that's the most crucial window of time. So they sort of contradict themselves a little bit. But Matt, I mean, given the scene, surely that'd be enough to get folks acting.
It seems like it, right? And as we get into the fine details of the story, I think you will see why it appears to be a no-brainer that something very bad happened at this house that we're going to talk about to this person we're talking about. Before we get into it, quick note, this story takes place in time exactly, well, let's say approximately 1 week before we record this episode on Wednesday, August 28th. So there may be a few updates by the time you hear it. If there are major updates, we'll try and include them in some kind of addendum at the end of the story if we need to. But here we go. This thing we're describing here happened to a man named Paul Peavey and his friend Bruce Boynton. Bruce hadn't heard from Paul in 2 days, and this was on Monday, August 19th, all the way till August 21st of this year. So he was starting to get really worried. Bruce went to Paul's house to check on him, and he found Paul's house to be ransacked. He believed immediately that Paul had been the victim of some kind of foul play. This is a quote that Bruce gave to CBS Denver. He said it was obvious. He found the house ransacked. And in the case of Paul Peavey, remember I mentioned my dog being gone, how that was weird? Paul Peavey runs a dog breeding company called Elite European Dobermans, and he had 10 puppies, 10 Doberman puppies staying at his place. They were with him. They were part of his company, part of, what he does for a living, but they're also under his care. 10 puppies were missing from the home, as well as Paul. Paul was nowhere to be found.
Now, quick question, Matt. Question our fellow conspiracy realist will be asking as well. Are the puppies microchipped?
They are. So, and that's going to lead us down the tracks there towards the end of how do we actually find out what happened, or who maybe ransacked the house and took the puppies? And are those the same people? And then also what happened to Paul? Well, on August 21st, that's a Wednesday, when Bruce went to Paul's house, found it ransacked, he called the police. A deputy was sent to the property the next day on August 22nd to check it out. And he saw the same things that Bruce saw in Paul's house. And then, guys, it took 2 days to organize some kind of search party, or to actually have a group of officers out there to search in any way for Paul.
That's a long delay.
And once that search began, it took 3 or 4 minutes before they discovered Paul's body on his own property, where the deputy had been, where his friend had been looking around.
Wow.
Buried under some of the stuff that had been ransacked?
No, he was partially buried on the property. So on the land somewhere. Buried. Yes.
Jesus Christ.
The definition of shallow grave.
That
Someone
is
just
bold.
threw some stuff over a corpse.
Well, I say bold. That's not, it's like a compliment. That is just cold and pretty
Lazy.
desperate. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. So it does appear to be a homicide, pretty much for sure. Those puppies. Oh, and we should mention here, Paul Peavey is 57 years old, or was 57 years old at the time of his passing. And, he's been doing this for quite a while. That you can go to the website for eliteeuropeandobermans.com and check out, the dogs in the business and kind of who this person was and where it all was taking place. And you see pictures of Paul winning awards for the animals that he was bringing into the world and selling, but giving to other people for, to have a beautiful animal. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of a sweet thing. I know there are issues with breeding of all various animals, but
clearly isn't running a puppy mill.
No.
And I appreciate you bringing up the age there, Matt, because that may have played a part in law enforcement's obvious delay in investigating this. Because let's be honest, if it was a 9-year-old child, if it was maybe a person who had other people living with them, perhaps the investigators would have been a little bit more proactive. I feel like that's a fair point to bring up. This is a 57-year-old man who appears to, at least from what I understand, appears to have lived on his own.
That's what I'm seeing too. So I guess maybe they thought something else could be going on. Maybe I still just don't understand no matter what. If there's a missing person, you've got a friend that's super concerned, and then the house looks like that.
Right.
I don't know. I don't care how old that person is. If you're a deputy, you immediately sound an alarm. Be like, yo, something's wrong, guys.
100%.
Kind of speaks to the somewhat, I don't know, at times frustrating nature of law enforcement, where it's also really difficult to report a stalker, because until they've done something, actionable, quote unquote, they haven't actually broken the law, but you're sort of seeing this behavior and fearing for your life. And while they maybe haven't done anything yet, doesn't mean they're not going to, but you're helpless to do anything about it until they've hurt you. It's just, I don't know, just another example of things that sometimes maybe the threshold for police intervening is a little high.
I'm sorry, innocent civilian. You cannot report the crime that is about to happen. You can only report a crime after it has occurred. Hope it's not fatal. Call us back.
But also, please do not pre-crime us, everybody. Thank you.
Also, please dial 2 for pre-crime.
Yeah. So let's get back to the microchips thing you mentioned, Ben.
Yeah.
That's really important. You can go to the Clear Creek County Sheriff's Office's Facebook page, seriously, And you can see a post there that was made by whoever the admin is there. And they are talking about this case. They're noting that there was another Colorado Springs Doberman puppies like Craigslist ad that went out, and just noting to everybody who's paying attention to it, that is a separate business and has nothing to do with these Doberman puppies, at least from what they can tell. The people who made that ad and who run that business were cooperative with the investigation. Doesn't appear to be related. The microchipped puppies, again, they're thinking around 10 of them may have already been sold, or a few of them have already been sold through the website that was run there, the Elite European Dobermans. That's Paul's business. So they may have been sold in this weird little time window that happened just before he went incommunicado and missing. So they're asking everybody who purchased one of these Dobermans to reach out and talk to them so they can at least get eyes on and hear from individuals who purchased a puppy. The other puppies that are missing, hopefully, can be eventually tracked down when whoever is responsible for this gets desperate to either sell one or, put it through a system somewhere and somebody takes it in for the first time to a vet, maybe, or something like that. But for now, at least as of today, Wednesday, August 28th, it appears that the trail is a bit cold, at least from the forward-facing Facebook page of the Clear Creek County Sheriff's Office. One more thing to add here, guys. The Clear Creek County Sheriff has officially publicly apologized for the amount of time it took to search for Paul, as a missing person. You can check out 9 News. That's at least where I found it. They have a YouTube page, and they have a video titled Clear Creek County Sheriff Apologizes After Community Finds Missing Idaho Springs Man Dead. And that's talking about Paul. And you can read it, or you can actually watch and hear the apology if you wish there. Guys, I don't really have anything else on this one besides let's keep looking out for information about this. And let's also think about, I don't know, are there ways that we can ensure that one of us would know if something was wrong, other than just having to be incommunicado with somebody for X amount of time before one of us gets up and actually looks? I don't know. Maybe there's a way that's not intrusive, but also keep us more safe.
Perhaps this is inspiration for an episode. That's part of the reason we do Strange News as a weekly segment. One thing that would be very helpful is the establishment of check-in times. Honestly, if you have someone in your life who may be elderly or may be on or off various grids, it's also helpful as very easy OPSEC in a world of spoof phone calls and weird text. It's also very helpful to have some sort of code phrase and very easy to deploy.
Did you know that apparently Adam Sandler calls Rob Schneider every single week without fail? Good to have a friend like Adam Sandler in your life.
If you have a regular phone call, I think we talked about that before, or some kind of regular meeting thing. Again, I used ththese recordings as an example because it's one of the most regular occurring things that I have in my life.
In all of our lives, I think, probably, yeah.
So, something like that is good. But Ben, I like your point of a code word. That's interesting. So if you ever did get in touch with one of your friends and something was wrong, you could use that word, and then no one on the line would know but you two.
Me and my kid have a code emoji that anytime they're at a sleepover or some social thing and they get overwhelmed or they don't want to be there, but they don't want to say they want to leave, they text me this emoji, and I know I need to make it my fault. So I tell them that they're in trouble because they didn't do something and that they're getting picked up because they have to come home. It's different but similar, but it is a very specific emoji that no one else will use. And this would also apply to any sort of obviously unsafe situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it for this segment, guys. We'll be right back with more strange news. This just in, we've got some news. We are recording this on Saturday, August 31st. As of Friday, August 30th, the AP News has announced, along with a lot of other news outlets, that a man has been arrested in connection with the death of Paul Peavey that we've just been discussing. They've arrested a man named Sergio Ferrer. Apparently, this guy, Sergio, was arrested on August 24th, just a few hours after the body of Paul Peavey was discovered. and he was arrested on a completely unrelated charge having to do with an arrest warrant because he failed to appear in court in Nebraska on a weapons charge. So this guy is sitting there in prison, and then the sheriff's office, working with a bunch of other law enforcement agencies, found enough evidence to charge this man with first-degree felony murder and aggravated robbery in connection with the death of Paul Peavey. Now, keep in mind, while this man is under arrest and he is charged with these crimes, he is innocent until he is proven guilty via evidence and a court or, all that stuff. Last thing. The puppies haven't been found yet. Gosh, that's crushing news. I know it was for me. Sorry to report that. But if you hear anything about the puppies, if you see anything, definitely let somebody know. We can't give up looking for these puppies after an hour. We haven't put up posters or anything. We've just been sitting around on our porches like goons and waiting. We all got to think, these are all of our pets. We got a responsibility. If these dogs are lost, and they are, we don't look for an hour and call it quits. We get our asses out there and we find these fucking dogs. Yes, that was a reference specifically for Adam Sandler in case he ever hears this, but it's also serious. Let's find these puppies. So there's your update. We'll keep looking for more, and let us know if you find anything after hearing this. We'll be right back with more strange news.
And we're back with another piece of strange news. This is kind of a two-pronged story. It involves two organizations that we talk about relatively frequently. One, maybe we've talked about a bit more frequently and not for particularly good reasons. NASA and Boeing. You may have heard the news that astronauts Butch Williams and Suni Williams are getting a little more than they bargained for in terms of their time and space. They were intended to visit the International Space Station for a 10-day mission, testing out, it's my understanding, some of the potential vulnerabilities of this Boeing spacecraft called the Starliner. Well, it turns out there were indeed some pretty significant vulnerabilities, or at the very least issues, technical issues, because the thrusters of the Starliner failed. And now, because of reasons that we'll get into, many of which are obvious, the logistics of it all, what was once a 10-day mission is now potentially going to be months and months. I believe upwards of 8 months they're going to be, quote-unquote, stuck in space. Not quite the same as being lost in space. We know where they are. But, this pretty abysmal performance by another Boeing product seems to be at fault here. Did you follow this story? And have you heard much about the Starliner project? It's my understanding that it's had problems since its inception, like for many years, some of which was software related. Now, obviously, this is quite hardware related.
Yeah, we've been talking with a couple of fellow conspiracy realists about this on email in particular. We want to start with a shout out to the astronauts themselves, Barry Wilmore and Sunita Williams. These astronauts, fortunately, are veterans in that literal rarefied air. This is not their first rodeo by any means. In fact, Sunita Williams in particular holds several records for things like marathons in space. These folks, if you had to pick two experts to survive in space, you'd be hard-pressed to find two better people than these individuals. So luckily, they're doing a bang-up job, but also we see that this has been called an embarrassment by Boeing.
Oh, absolutely.
The folks at NASA are making the right call there.
100% in a streak of continuous embarrassments, that resulted in the CEO stepping down. And it's just been an absolute abysmal year for Boeing. And this certainly doesn't add any, positive spin to the string of Boeing debacles. And it also isn't a particularly great look for NASA, who, since suspending their space shuttle program back in 2011, have been trying to get it back off the ground. for lack of a better term that isn't quite so punny. Another additional embarrassment is that the private sector is actually having to step in order to, I think the word rescue is maybe a little hyperbolic here, but SpaceX is sending their Dragon spacecraft to shuttle the stuck astronauts back home. And just to be clear, the astronauts, Barry Butch Wilmore and Sunita Suni Williams, have been on the ISS since June for that 8-day mission, which is obviously already well past that window of time. And guys, I just have to say, we just had a little bit of a talk off mic just to kind of help clarify some things. I was like, is it really as dumb and as simple as they're needing to wait this many months because SpaceX doesn't have a flight scheduled until then? And Ben, you pointed out to me, it is in fact every bit as dumb and as simple as that. And you guys, I believe the troubled Starliner is going to be, I guess for lack of a better term, space towed back to Earth by Boeing to be examined to see what the hell went wrong.
Well, that is a pretty expensive flight to go get 2 passengers, don't you think? Sending a rocket up, no matter who made it, no matter how advanced the tech is. I
do sometimes forget how ludicrously expensive these flights are and how they have to take into account every bit of weight, of every bit of the payload of whatever they're bringing or bringing back. And it is absolutely mission critical that is adhered to, for safety reasons, for safety and financial reasons. So while we maybe don't have an exact number of what that flight is going to cost, in the past, we've looked at the budgets for these kind of flights, and they are often in the millions, right? I mean, just in terms of like one of these flights. So it's nothing to sneeze at. So the fact that they're having to wait that long, because we know SpaceX has had some issues in the past as well, and I'm sure they're planning for a big launch, a big show, and they want to make sure everything, goes off as planned without a hitch. And so they're not going to rush this. And apparently, to your point, Ben, the astronauts are not like outwardly angry about it. And I believe it's going to involve some sort of record.
Yeah, absolutely. We do know, I appreciate you pointing out the fact that no outer space human engineered enterprise has gotten things 100% correct. It's just impossible at this point. It is also very expensive, and with great respect to the professionals involved on ground and in space. When you guys were talking about the cost of these launches, I kept having that line from the Heath Ledger Joker playing in my head. It's not about money. It's about sending a message.
Sure. That's appropriate here, I think, for sure.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but
it's appropriately inappropriate, and I think I think it totally lands. Can't not make puns because words, mean different things. But I think this is a really interesting story, and the fact, I do think maybe the most interesting part of this is that it hasn't been reported so much as another Boeing up. It's much more about these astronauts are stuck in space and the sort of hyperbolic, notion of astronauts being stuck in space. So I don't know if Boeing's PR is working overtime and a little bit in the spin zone, but I have not seen Boeing front and center much in this story, at least in the reporting that I've seen. And I do have to wonder if that's a product of any clever media, manipulation.
We talked about this a little bit before. It is a fully separate segment of the company Boeing.
I understand that.
Right?
Of course, it would have to be.
They're different entities.
Yeah. But still, it's the name. It's the name that's not doing so hot overall.
But the major problem with Boeing, the airline company, is that they outsource all of those different parts, right? That then get manufactured in far-flung parts of the world, which are then brought together in a factory somewhere where actual facts Boeing employees generally put together those pieces, and they're finding that the pieces don't fit so good.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I'm a perfect example of how easy it is to throw the baby out with the bathwater when you hear stories about Boeing at large having all of these technical problems, and you hear about a Boeing spacecraft having technical problems, and you immediately put it together that, yes, one thing is related to another. So while that may not be the case, it certainly isn't the best PR opportunity here for Boeing. Obviously, no one was hurt, but surely it's going to be incredibly expensive to tow this thing or to get this thing back to Earth, as mentioned previously, in terms of how these kind of missions can just balloon, manned or unmanned. And there's a really great article in The Conversation about the kind of history of this project. And apparently it's been a bit troubled for about a decade. So, it's the Boeing partnership with NASA went back to the very beginning of the space program, back from Mariner 10 and the early shuttle program. But this particular project has been in the works for about 10 years and has faced multiple issues getting functional. And to your point, Ben, these kind of setbacks are part and parcel of, exploring the outer reaches of space. So,
yeah, unfortunately, you can't make an automobile without risking the possibility of car accidents. That's one way to put it.
Futurism points out something really interesting, and that is that when they're sending it back, as you said, Ben, unmanned, right? They're sending the entire capsule and the whole thing back.
The Starliner.
Starliner. As it re-enters, it is going to separate from the thrusters, the propulsion systems, the crew cabin and the propulsion system. The propulsion system is what got all those gas leaks, and that is the reason that they couldn't send the astronauts back on the system. But as it separates, guess what? It crashes into the ocean and burns up mostly as it's going through the atmosphere. So nobody can do any forensics on the thing. So nobody can know exactly what went wrong so they can fix it for the next time.
That's a sticky situation.
They also don't know for sure that things will go wrong. There are some fascinating quotes that may or may not reassure you, fellow groundwalkers. Let's go to there was a conversation, like a press club conversation with Steve Stitch, the commercial crew program manager of NASA. And this is how Stitch described or portrayed NASA and Boeing's relationship. Called it, quote, just a little disagreement in terms of the level of risk. It depends on how you evaluate the risk. We did it a little differently with our crew than Boeing did. So primarily what they're doing is keeping these astronauts safe while avoiding the possibility of something going horribly wrong, right? There are so many redundancies baked in. There's a lot of news saying Boeing is, air quotes, humiliated or embarrassed. But everybody's making the right call here.
100%. I would agree. And again, like the astronauts in question are not at the very least outwardly griping to the press, about this. So seems like something of a non-issue. But it is interesting. And I think part of the interesting thing about it that I mentioned earlier is the way it's being reported on. It just kind of really puts into focus the kind of hyperbolic nature of these types of headlines, just the notion that astronauts are stuck in space, and that it's ruining everything. I just think it does encourage one to read past the headlines, I would say, a little bit, as we always try to do here on Strange News, on stuff they don't want you to know.
I do like this idea you're taking, though, Noel. You should write an article entirely blaming the astronauts. I love this idea.
Butch and Suni
super
are the worst.
Privileged butthole astronauts wasting time in space.
Yeah. Give me a break.
Just make it sound like Fire Festival somehow.
That is what the ISS is, basically. It's just a floating, space-bound fire festival.
Let's go. Let's do a full anti-astronaut show.
Yeah, I'm sure we can get the bosses to pay for it. Well, that's all for now. Let's take a quick break, hear a word from our sponsors, and then come back with one more piece of strange news.
And we have returned, folks, not just with you, and thank you as always for joining us, but to space. Something interesting happened quite recently. the nation of China has produced enormous quantities of water using lunar soil. We're talking about moon juice is how I'd like to refer to it as a piece of technical nomenclature. This, if sustainable, reproducible, this will solve one of the big problems with the idea of life on the moon, with creating a population of literal lunatics. We've known for some time that the moon does harbor the possibility of potable water. We talked about it in recent evenings, the idea of life on the moon in subterranean little hidey holes, right? Returning back to the troglodytic trends of earlier humans. I don't know. First off, since we role played in the beginning this evening, I'd like to role play here again. If you guys were offered a job as water miners on the moon, how much would you have to be paid per year?
That's tough. I mean, 'cause you'd have to be gone a long time. It would have to be really, really worthwhile for your family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would argue they might target people who were in dire straits,
100%.
who really needed it bad. I don't know. I'll tell you what, smarter people than me are going to do that calculation, and it's going to benefit the smarter people. I'll tell you that up front.
Yeah. If I was qualified to do it and I had some science background and I didn't have a family, $324,000 a year.
Seems legit, but you're probably lowballing it, honestly. I mean,
Kind of lowballing, right?
I don't know. That seems like a lot to me. Okay.
But also, I mean, given the circumstances you outlined,
you're a supervisor, though, for that salary, right? You're like leading the freaking expedition.
and they're
I'm a digger.
You're a digger. He's a moon mine boy, right? Are they paying for your housing?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
obviously,
If Robert Heinlein is to be believed, one would hope.
right? So they're also in that case, hopefully paying for your food at this point, or maybe you wash up there and it's indentured servitude, right?
It's Firefest all over again. You got a piece of white bread and some withered lettuce for your one meal a day.
You say, "Gosh, I'm thirsty," and they say, "Well, get to the mine."
Get to the toilet.
Yeah, if you're so
This water isn't for
paranoidly
you. This is for the rich people on Earth in their biodomes.
Oh, that reminds me, the concept of resource extraction there. You might be surprised, folks, to learn that countries creating the best coffee in the world, the people who actually live in those countries, for the most part, are drinking Nespresso, instant coffee, because who on earth could afford this crazy expensive resource? And perhaps that's what we'll get to here after 3 years of in-depth research and repeated reproducible processes. The Chinese government has confirmed there's a brand new method of using lunar soil, moon dust, moon dirt to produce large amounts of water. This is a game changer. You can read about it widely. One of the best sources here in the West is Reuters. China is aiming to set up what they call a basic station on the moon by 2035. And I love that they're calling it a basic station.
When do we get the deluxe station?
Right? That's the idea. When do you get Moon Plus?
You got to pay extra for that, I guess.
Okay, let's get into the science. How do you turn lunar soil into freaking water?
I mean, is it a matter of extracting like trace amounts of moisture from huge volumes of soil?
It's kind of like the magic of belief. You know what I mean?
Wait a minute now.
Well, okay. According to what I'm looking at, Ben, at least according to Reuters, China's state broadcaster CCTV says that it's because there's a large amount of hydrogen that exists in the soil, like I guess naturally occurring hydrogen in lunar soil.
They're
So
sciencing it up, huh? Okay.
So if you heat it very, very high, you can probably add some oxygen to the mix somehow and get water, I'm assuming.
Yeah, what they found was you could take 1 unit of lunar soil and produce a pretty impressive output of potable water. So one British ton of soil can make minimum 50 kilograms of water, which maths out to the daily drinking water consumption of a crew of 50 people if they're not too thirsty.
But like one of the big problems we always run into back here on Earth and things that lead to potential water wars is that like we can't make more water, like or it's too energy prohibitive, cost prohibitive to desalinate like ocean water or whatever. So what is so unique about this hydrogen that we can't reproduce that here on Earth?
It's more a question of, the problem that they're solving here, or what they're solving for, is not the same problems we're solving for on Earth. The problem on Earth is potable, safe water, how best to create that without also destroying the environment, right? That's desalination technology is huge, but to your point, it is relatively impractical on Earth because there are other methods of ensuring clean water for the humans on the planet. They're just the boring stuff no one wants to do. Like number one, conserve water, or number two, be a little nicer to the environment. People don't want to hear that. The problem that China is attempting to solve for on the moon is to get past the great issue of supply chains.
Mm-hmm.
Water is, and please beat me here, Doc, water is fucking cartoonishly heavy. If you have ever been hiking, if you have ever been in a situation where you have to carry around liquid water, you know it is super inconvenient. It's like realizing how many books you own when you have to move from one house to the next.
So the problem they're solving for is more like for creating water for people already in space in a practical way rather than having to transport it. So at scale, my question being, this would not be efficient on Earth. It could be done, but it just doesn't make any sense. And it wouldn't be like some grand scale solution to our water shortage problem, right?
Yeah, that's well put. It doesn't solve the same problems that we have on Earth if you are thinking through a long-term occupation of the moon and you're allowing for all the human things, right? You want to solve stuff like radiation exposure by putting people underground, right, beneath a healthy shield of rock, and then you want to solve for the water. The next thing is the food, right? How do you get past that part? And then after that, I'm sure we'll get to sanitation issues. Where do people poop? What happens to their poop? Have you thought about the smell?
And how do you reconstitute it to get some moisture? Because, you imagine this is like having technology that is a soil to water microwave machine kind of thing that you put a ton of soil in it and you get 100 bottles of water that are like, what they say 17.6 ounces or 500 milliliters. So, I mean, that's great. It's a magic machine that'll do that for the folks that are already up there. And you only got to send that machine one time out to the lunar surface, right? Mm-hmm. Which is great. But
in theory, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. The solar energy on the moon is going to be so nice to have, though.
Nice setup, foreshadowing. I love it. Also, if you need to support your local lunatics, right, then what you'll do, I would argue what you would do in the era of capitalism is sell very expensive moon water. You know what I mean? You make it for peanuts up there, and then you charge, like, what is the fair price for a small bottle of moon water for the type of folks who buy Cybertrucks? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I'd say about the price of a bar of astronaut ice cream. That's what I pay for. No, it's definitely worth more than that. Astronaut ice cream is pretty bussin', though.
Yeah, agreed. I think we were all keeping that front of mind anytime we have a conversation about the moon. Matt, do you have some news about moon water?
No, I thought, hey, a great name for moon water would be Luna or Lunar or some. I was trying to come up with a bottle of water from the moon name, but it's all taken.
It's done. Check out our Luna TikTok. Also,
wait till Nestle gets to the moon, then all bets will be off.
Oh, there's one called Aqua Luna Moon Water. And it's just like alkaline water or something that looks super high end and expensive.
Well, soon that'll be considered false advertising.
We are getting into moon water. That's what I'm persuaded by. I am convinced by the arguments here. Codename Doc, you have to be on board with us technically on this one. We also, if you, like our long-suffering super producer, are not persuaded by our initial pitch for moon water, we have another thing we can sell you via our good friends at Reflect Orbitals. Have you ever been walking around at night, you guys, and thought it's inconvenient to me that the passage of the earth and the sun doesn't obey my schedule?
All the time.
And Matt's nodding solemnly here. A couple of boffins at a place called Reflect Orbitals want to build space mirrors to reflect sunlight onto solar panels at night. According to their official website, that's their primary goal, right? They want to solve for the problem of solar energy. However, the reason they're in the news is because if everything works out with the infrastructure they're proposing, you can pay for them to send sunlight to you, no matter what time of day it is, no matter where you are on this wide, wide world.
Ben, can you confirm to me? I could not figure out if this was real or not. It seems so not real to me. I saw a viral video of some sort where a dude has an app and he clicks on the app and then they look up in the sky and a giant light that looks like sunlight beams down on them, and it's in the middle of the night, and you're like, what? And
I think it was a cryptocurrency scam. Like, we're going to send you some sunlight through your app. Like, that's like the name of a crypto token or something. That's
don't worry,
bizarre.
There's a token for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
No, what is the deal though, Ben? Like, is that what Matt's describing? I haven't seen this. This is news to me.
Yeah, this is fascinating, and I love the points you guys are bringing up, because first things first, that fancy video, in my opinion, it's just that. It's a fancy video. It's intriguing. It's fun to watch. It is aspirational. How about that? And part of the reason I'm describing it as such is due to multiple iterations of research by journalists, particularly Stan Schroeder over at Mashable, who note that when the CEO of this startup, Ben Nowak, introduced this video to the world, he posted it on X, and in the video, which is inspirational, you see him using, as Matt described, an app to pinpoint a location. And then when he hits that, when he drops a pin, right, to go back to our earlier conversation, when he shares his location with the app, it appears that a actual physical beam of light hits him where he's standing with astonishing fidelity. Big if true, cool. But in the near future, this level of, I think, specificity is still not something humans possess. You can't call a spotlight to you via the communication of light through mirrors on that scale yet. However, you can do something like it.
Well, yeah, I mean, on their website, reflectorbital.com, you can reserve a spot. Like, you can say where you want sunlight to be. The duration is 4 minutes. The diameter is 5 kilometers. It's huge. And then delivery begins, they say, Q4 2025. All you have to put in there is your name, your phone number, an email, the organization, and why do you want to spot a sunshine at night, pal? You got to answer that question.
Right. Yeah. Along with your social security number, list your fears in a blood sample.
That's it.
I'm sorry. I just don't understand. What's the point of this? What is this? Is a gimmick? I don't understand at all.
Imagine you're trying to get a quick charge on some solar panels or something, right? You do a spot of sunlight for, I guess, just a couple of 4 minutes.
You rent it for is it you pay by the minute? I don't. Okay, all right.
Well, imagine also maybe an earlier version of this. You're attempting to siege a stronghold of vampires, right? Of Nosferatu. And you need to ideally hit them during the day when they're weak, right? But sometimes you get in situations. And if you can get enough sunlight there, even for, I would say 4 minutes is generous. If you get enough sunlight there, then you have a fighting chance. Yeah. You just have to make sure you get the app, you get the email sign up in advance.
Brave new world.
So the thing that mystifies me about this, the reason I'm bringing it up here is vampire jokes aside, it's showing us similar technology to cloud seeding, to weather modification, right? The idea of cloud seeding is genuine. It is legitimate. However, it is pretty unspecific, right? It led to disastrous things not too long ago. And maybe this sunlight app will be a boon to solve for the problems of solar energy generation. Maybe people will use it as a flex, but that's where I'd like to end on this question. Do you guys think there will be, as you said, Matt, later in 2025, do you think there will be people who pay to have the sun at night?
Yeah, I might do this. I would do this. I don't know how much it costs. This seems like a lot of fun. Just to prank your friends or something?
It feels like an Elden Ring spell. I did think of you.
Oh, right. Or to propose or something. All of a sudden a light comes on in the sky and whatever. I don't know. I could think of a million reasons to have a 4-minute spotlight on you randomly in the dark.
So moon juice is trash, but 4 minutes of out of season sunlight is perfect.
Hell, yeah.
Luna juice and sunshine on demand. This does sound like Brave New World or something along those lines.
And Oasis is getting back together, probably based entirely on this news, entirely on the moon juice research and Reflect Orbital.
Liam loves his moon juice.
He's always talking about it. His Twitter is crazy. We've been speaking a little bit about this Oasis reunion off air. It is very much not conspiratorial, but it's definitely strange news. And with that, we're going to call it an evening. We would love to hear from you folks. Let us know what you think about any and all of the stories we have mentioned. And please join us online. You may end up on our listener mail segment.
Right. You can find us in the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on YouTube with video content galore, on Facebook with our Facebook group, Here's Where It Gets Crazy, and on X, FKA Twitter. However, on Instagram and TikTok, we are Conspiracy Stuff Show. And while you're on the internet, why not bop on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a lovely little review, if the spirit moves you.
If you've got something to say with your mouth to us, you can do that by calling 1-833-STDWYTK. It's a voicemail system. When you call in, give yourself a cool nickname and let us know if we can use your name and message on the air. If you got more to say than can fit in that message, why not instead send us a good old-fashioned email? We are
the entities that read every piece of correspondence we receive. Be well aware yet unafraid. Sometimes the void writes back. And hey, shout out to our pal Sav over in Australia. Sent us their first podcast appearance, and we love tuning in. Always feel free to send us things that you create. Conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.